all these rejections from the middle Bollinger Band.
Resistance we're going to need.
If you actually see here, we get a
And we'll look for a
hard
healthy
double
higher
I
low.
would not
don't have
be
the
convinced
pullback
to enter a
pressure.
long trade.
Hey, crypto friends. Not much going on. Not a lot to update. Things are very slow today. We're getting a daily inside bar on Bitcoin. We're going to look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, Binance, and EOS. And at this point, we're just waiting very patiently, hopefully, for a 4-hour break. So I am still looking for a move to 7,000, 7,200 for Bitcoin to give us this weekly equilibrium nice and tight. And that would be the ideal scenario for me in terms of clarity and potential to break either direction late September. So I'm still looking for a bull move to the upside. And at this point, as long as the 4-period exponential moving averages hold as they have been for the last day and a half essentially, then I still have that favor. If we see a loss of these 4-hour higher lows, we're going to shift and say, all right, that might be it, 4-hour weekly lower high. And if that is the case, if we lose the daily higher low pattern, and that's all we get, up to 68.90, that's very clearly going to favor the bears on the weekly time frame. The bulls have to get to 7,000, 7,200 to even level the playing field to a certain degree. So at this point, the 4-hour higher lows I'm watching, 66.54, 66.30, and 65.72. So a couple little clear higher lows. We did get a bull break today from some resistance levels, but there wasn't much follow through behind it. So again, not a whole lot going on. I'm looking at resistance of 67.73 and 67.90. Canadian MJ has been continuing to explode in astounding ways that have articles now coming out. Fidelity just sent out an article that said, comparing it to Bitcoin in terms of the surge up and the irrationality of the market cap and the value that these companies now have. But very interesting to see that. Again, it's the emotional reaction of traders and investors that allow things to get so euphoric and so blown out of proportion. We're seeing it in Canadian MJ now. So I've made comparisons of these two sectors before, and nice to see that other people are now making the same comparisons. So we're watching clear 4-hour lower highs, clear higher lows, and we should see a break tonight. If we don't see a break tonight, we're going to be at a complete standstill. But all about the daily inside bar. We've now traded within the range of that BitMEX candlestick at this point 5 days in a row. And that was anticipated due to the range and due to the lack of volume. So we will patiently wait for a break in Bitcoin. There are some altcoins picking up now in terms of some bull breaks, and Binance is one of them. We'll look at it in just a second. As far as Ethereum goes, I would only just be watching the 4-hour, or I should say the daily time frame, not even the 4-hour. And that's just because it's so tight. At this point, the last 5 days have essentially fit within this range. So I'm looking for a bear break of 270 or a bull break of 283.38. It's very simple. And at this point, if I were not in a position, I certainly would not want to enter a position until we get a break of one of these levels. So we should see a break again on tomorrow's daily candlestick. If we did look at the 4-hour time frame, we do have a little bit more information. Again, very clear lower highs, a couple clear higher lows, break imminent. So Binance is now catching up. In the altcoin video that I did yesterday, I talked about how we had names that were comparative to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's on one side with the daily higher low and higher high, and the names that were weaker without the daily higher low and higher high were similar to ETH, and those are the weaker names. Binance used to be comparable to ETH before today. Big bull volume spike, very notable, and of course a bull break to a higher high by getting over 1098. So new daily support is 973. Anything above 973 keeps the daily higher lows intact. And in terms of resistance, 1131 followed by 1189. So what this does on the weekly time frame is gets follow through on the bounce, but we're not changing this Binance weekly time frame anytime soon in terms of the trend. 1489 is the last weekly lower high. So we would anticipate that a weekly lower high is going to form compared to that level, and to change the trend back in favor of the bulls, it would then require a higher low and then a break of the lower highs. So the distance that we would need from here, another 35%, not likely from where we currently stand. So continuing to watch the correlation between Binance and Bitcoin. Obviously, this Binance move has nothing to do with Bitcoin's move, as we're not seeing anything similar. And I'm looking for that correlation to break again, as it was broken for so long, with Bitcoin remaining bullish with Binance remaining bullish while Bitcoin pulled back. So some nice follow through for the Binance bulls. And what this does is it moves it from the category of weaker names like Ethereum over to the stronger names like Bitcoin. EOS USD is one of those names that's on the weaker side, but it too is trying to change that. And we have our low, high of the bounce, higher low, lower high, and anything under 536 is just a lower high. Support is 481. So 481 to 536 is the range to be watching, and the bulls are making their way up to that level. You can see very low volume consolidation for the daily higher low, a spike in bull volume for the continuation move, but still a few resistance levels to get through. So the 4-hour time frame, we got plenty of resistances to watch, plenty of supports to watch. It's the same as everybody else, essentially. It's just some slight differences between these individual names as to where they stand comparative to each other. So I would expect volume and volatility to pick up a bit in the near-term future, specifically on Bitcoin's daily chart. Look at this volume dropping off. And that's, again, something that I point out where you'll notice on many time frames a volume declining pattern. Just consistent candlesticks in a row. And I would still call this declining, even though they're pretty even. But we saw Binance, the similar pattern, I should say, just leveling off and then a spike in volume giving us clear direction. So we're looking for a spike in volume on Bitcoin to let us know action is happening, and that's potentially coming tomorrow. The bulls want to see this is on Coinbase, they want to see more than 5,000 shares, but you can go around and look at the other exchanges, and Bitfinex here, the daily volume, again, pretty flat. Bulls want to see more than 17,000 to see the spike in volume, and the direction that the volume is associated with is the direction we look for the short-term momentum to take us, obviously. So in order to see a bull break and a break above the BitMEX high, we're going to need to see a spike in bull volume to do that. And for a clear rejection and a move back down to stay in the equilibrium, it would be bear volume. So even if we do see a bear break of 65.57 here on Bitfinex, we're still looking at the range. Again, the most important range for me is this entire candlestick of that pump day, that pump and dump day, essentially. And we can still break bearish and still be within that, but it would obviously shift odds to favor the bears significantly. It would make the bears a lot more comfortable, and that's where we stand. So overall, patient. You don't want to be over trading in this environment. There's some altcoins that are providing some opportunity, but if you're waiting on these big three, waiting is the key word, and not trying to over trade in tightening 4-hour patterns. So I appreciate you watching. We'll be back tomorrow as always. And keep an eye on the Canadian MJ sector, even if you're not trading it. Again, it cannot hurt to broaden your horizons and see how other sectors deal with emotional trading. Again, all these charts do is track human emotion, and to be able to see similar things in cryptocurrency, Canadian MJ, the tech sector. Right now, the market's at all-time high. So let's go over the big picture of things. The dollar is pulling back. It's still in a weekly uptrend. Gold is seeing an oversold bounce after getting crushed last week. The markets are raging bulls, euphoria to the max, all-time highs. The financial sector and all the banks are at all-time highs. The tech sector, Amazon, Apple, all-time highs. So the market itself is at all-time highs. So at this point, there is no fear in this market whatsoever. Watched a really good talk. I'll link the talk in the description of this video. But I like the longer-term perspective of it, more fundamentally driven. But one of the best points, the takeaways that I liked out of it, was how those of us who are on the cutting edge in terms of, knowing how to maneuver the cryptocurrency space, we are ahead. We're in the 1% essentially of being able to move our capital around away from currency. So if a currency suffers hyperinflation or things like that, we can move it into Bitcoin, or we can move it, in other markets, whereas most people don't have access to that. And he was talking about, obviously when more and more people have access, it's going to act as an equilibrium where hyperinflation won't happen as much because there's going to be people selling against that to exit. And it's going to open up borders to a certain degree where rather than having to flee a country and be a refugee, you can do so financially while staying physically put. So interesting topics. Again, I'm certainly don't go into fundamentals much here on the YouTube channel, but I certainly enjoy listening to them. So I will post that, and we'll see you tomorrow. Continue to do good things out there. I know you all will, and have a great 1, 2, 3, 4.
up, get on up, get up.